It's all Latin to me. Love is the secret language we're speaking. You are the one I was seeking. Like a lonely star seeks the lovely moon above. It's all Latin to me.
Hi, I'm Claire Martin and I'm standing here at the Crazy Coqs. I'm going to go and talk to Ty Jeffries. I've just been singing one of his songs you heard there, It's All Latin to Me. And I'm fascinated about him, the man behind the music, the man behind Miss Hope Springs, his fantastic muse, and also to tell him that Hope's left one of her earrings here. Let's go and find him.
Hi, Claire.
How are you? Fancy seeing you here. Ty, it's so lovely to meet you here on a stage that we've both shared over the years, the Crazy Coqs.
Yes.
10 years you've been performing here now.
I have, yes. A decade of decadence.
A decade. And as far as a room goes, really this is perhaps one of the best cabaret rooms, definitely in the country.
I would say the world, if
You'd say
not
the world.
the galaxy.
Great. Well, since you've moved to Sussex, a couple of years ago, I know you lived in Brighton before,
That's
but the
right.
last couple of years we've become friends, and I've
Yes,
become more and more
so
fascinated
pleased.
with you for many reasons, but mostly your songwriting, of course, attracted me to you initially, and you just heard me there singing a clip of
I was
It's All Latin
thrilled
to Me.
when you did that.
I was very pleased to be able to do it. So tell us about your songwriting. Start from the beginning. People may recognise your name, Ty Jeffries. They know your dad was Lionel Jeffries, of course, director and actor. But perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about your childhood and growing up and your musical journey.
Sure. Well, I grew up between Pinewood and Hollywood.
Were you a musical child? Were you a sort of one of those sort of natural, kids that could just pick music up, pick away at the piano?
I think so, yes. So my parents used to have these very glamorous parties, and I remember when I was only about 5, they had a piano, bass and drums for their parties. So after dinner, the band would play and people would dance.
In your house?
In the house,
Oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
in the sort of downstairs in the hall in the sitting room. And I remember the piano would be left there for a couple of days either side of the party. And I would just go down and start playing, and not like that, I would play just...
Pick away at it.
And I was like, wow, and I could write things, and I started writing this, and I wrote Greensleeves was one of the first
You
things
wrote Greensleeves?
Yeah, my father said, how did you learn to play that? And I said, I wrote it.
Very good.
So maybe, because they said Henry VIII wrote that, so maybe I was a reincarnation of Henry VIII. That's very complicated. Anyway, so then we had a piano left by some American friends in our potting shed. It was a beautiful Steinway grand, full grand, and...
That's a big potting shed.
It was a big potting shed, it was indeed.
A lot of
it had a lot of sofas in it, sofas and armchairs, because these parties my parents had would go into the potting shed, and maybe the potting shed meant more than just, bulbs and trowels. And I go in there and play, and started writing songs. I wrote Three Kings Rode Over the Desert was the first thing. It was like a little Christmas carol that I wrote.
Nice, sweet.
And then I would be in there for hours and hours and hours every day playing and writing, and it just flowed out of me, and it always has. It's just a natural gift.
Your parents obviously recognised that in you, and were you encouraged? Did you have like piano teacher and that kind of thing? Very formal training, was it?
The first one I had was the typical local piano teacher who was a bit of a harridan, and she whacked me over the knuckles. When I told my parents that, they took me from her, and I had piano lessons, but I went to boarding school when I was 6.5.
Wow.
So I had piano lessons there, music lessons there with Mr. Friedland, who was actually a very nice man, amongst not a very nice place. He was great. So music really even then became a sort of solace and an escape for me. So I was writing from that age right up till...
That's very young to go to boarding school, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you find anything you can latch onto to comfort you and be with you.
Yeah, and I was in the choir, and You know, we sang on the BBC, actually, our choir, when I was very young, before my voice dropped. And then I went to the Purcell School of Music. At the time I was in Hampstead, and I studied piano, violin, voice, composition, all that, but I was musically dyslexic. So
What does that mean? Sorry, does that, like, everything's a jumble on the page as...
Yes.
But you're not dyslexic looking at letters? It's just...
I can read. I mean, I can read easily, but I can't read, say, something like a menu in a restaurant.
Right.
That just starts spinning around, and almost in the same way that if I look at music, it just also starts spinning around on the page and makes no sense.
Wow.
So I developed different parts of my brain to be able to write and absorb the music and retain it. So all my repertoire is in my head.
At the Purcell School, was that something that was really sort of understood in those days? And did they help you with that? Did they see that?
Not really, no, and it's really sad. I think back in the day, it's both school and music school, people thought you were just a bit lazy.
Yeah.
Or you weren't trying hard enough, you weren't applying yourself. And I think we've come a long way with that, and I wonder how perhaps things might have changed had I had a bit more support.
So, you know, you mentioned your parents then, both sort of, well, your father especially, Ty, Lionel Jeffries, very much in showbiz. So perhaps you can just name drop a bit and tell us some of the people that you met growing up, because you must have at those parties come across some
amazing
some
people.
Great people.
I mean, just off the top of my head, the people I remember coming to the house were Roald Dahl and Patricia Neal, and Roald Dahl would always come upstairs and tell me a continuing bedtime story, which was very magical, very dark, and so it's given me a dark tinge to my songwriting. And Diana Dawes would come always, Nanette Newman and Brian Forbes would be there.
Nanette Newman, isn't it?
Yeah, Morgan Wise would come. Fred Astaire was a great friend.
Fred Astaire. I mean, did you get it as a kid that how famous they were? You must have seen them on the TV, and yeah, wow.
Well, I was fascinated by Golden Age Hollywood independently, even though we'd lived in Hollywood in the 60s when I was a little boy. My father went out there to make Camelot.
Right.
And, you know, I was hanging out with Vanessa Redgrave and Richard Harris and people who were in the movie. And I saw firsthand Golden Age Hollywood.
Anybody sit at the piano with you? Any musicians?
Yes, so I was encouraged by Elmer Bernstein, the composer who wrote Magnificent Seven, music and the music for To Kill a Mockingbird, because my father made a movie, wrote and directed a movie called The Amazing Mr. Blondin. He did The Railway Children, Amazing Mr. Blondin, and a film called Baxter. And Elmer Bernstein wrote the music for The Amazing Mr. Blondin, which is very beautiful.
Did I dream it, or did you once say John Mills as well sat at the piano with
right.
you?
Yeah, so I mean, I was playing quite simple pianos and simple chords and traditional chords, and then he said, "Did you know that if you had a ninth or a 13th, you can create these really rich, interesting chords?" And I did that, and because of him, and discovered this whole new world of harmony. I mean, I was always very into Ravel, Debussy, Poulenc, the French Impressionists, and those chords are in there, and I think it's where jazz and classical music of that era combined. You listen to Gershwin and Ravel, they're very similar harmonics, and they were great friends. You know, they used to write to each other and visit each other, so there was this lovely relationship.
Connection,
and I felt I connected to both Ravel and the Gershwins.
But going back to Diana Dawes and this sort of glamour and the golden age of Hollywood, eventually we will talk about, you know, your alter ego, Miss Hope Springs. But looking at Diana Dawes and all this sort of glamour and performance art, maybe we should look at you now doing a sort of piece that you said you filmed just in one shot in your flat, which is you being an actor really with one of your songs. Tell me about the song and what it's about.
So it's a sort of, Miss Hope Springs came into being sort of in 2000, well, she was always within me.
Lurking.
Yeah, lurking. The first thing I ever did with Miss Hope Springs was in the mid-90s. There was a show called Miss Hope Springs Sings Streisand. And, but it wasn't until sort of 2008 I actually started doing Miss Hope Springs singing my songs and writing music and lyrics for her. So the character in the clip is really a sort of version of Miss Hope Springs. She's actually meant to portray a carnival performer who was left behind at the bus station when the troupe left town. And she's still there years later waiting for them to come back.
That's why she's got the suitcase. Let's see the clip of Carnival.
Welcome to the carnival. Don't you love a marching band? Life's a harlequin parade that turns to sawdust in your hand. Welcome to the carnival. Even clowns grow old in time, grow jaded with their faded act, as I have now become with mine. But if you really want me to, I'll fetch my feathers and my smile, and in the half-light act out happy endings for a while.
So that was you singing Carnival, very dramatic. Obviously we couldn't play the whole of it, but I do love that song.
Thank you.
So when you come out of the Bristol School of Music, you're in your 20s, you're in London. What year was it? What were you doing? What were you thinking? What were you dreaming?
Gosh, yeah, so I was dreaming of being a songwriter, being a composer and lyricist, getting a publishing deal, getting a recording deal. That's what I worked with. I signed to Elton John and John Reed Rocket Music in about 1982, 83. And
well, you must have thought, this is it.
I did think this was it, but it wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
I did write a few songs. I wrote some songs for Carol Kenyon, who was with Heaven 17, and she had quite a lot of chart success. We were on Top of the Pops with my song Warrior Woman. And it's funny because at the time I was writing songs that at the time people said were old-fashioned.
Right.
And this was before the sort of renaissance of vintage, anything vintage, which was more recent. And so now my songs are much more relevant because they are vintage in style, because they're classic. They do the same things to your ears as standards.
Yeah, they do.
And
they
your
really
heart,
do.
hopefully, in your
Yeah,
head.
they do.
But they're fresh. It's not the old repertoire. These are new songs that fit into that.
What appealed to me when I started listening to your songs, apart from thinking, I think you're a great craftsman, I think you're a terrific lyricist, but all of it, I love your harmonies, I love the way that each song is very different, but they are like standard quality. They often have got that kind of, you know, fantastic middle eight. They're not pop songs. They've got some meat on them.
Yes.
And I think that's really rare, and that's fascinating to me, that how you can just sort of, and they're all very, very different. What sort of songs were you writing in your 20s, and were you still in London, or where were you?
I was actually by that time performing at Langhams Brasserie, where I got my first job playing the piano and singing, and then went on to the Roof Gardens in Kensington, worked for Richard Branson playing and singing. And so I was doing standards, some Gershwin, and you know, My Funny Valentine, and The Way You Wear Your Hat, and all that stuff.
They can't take that away from me.
That's the one.
Everybody calls it that, though.
and then I started introducing my songs in sort of seamlessly.
Nice.
And people would come and say, I haven't heard that. Is that a Gershwin song or something from a musical? And so I've kept doing that, really. I don't think my songwriting style has changed. In fact, I still play some songs like Shanghai Lily. It's something I wrote 30 years ago.
But that's what classic songs do. They are timeless, aren't they? They, you know, you do, as a jazz singer for 35 years now, I'm still singing songs I was singing at 19 because I'm still learning how to sing them. Like, you're still trying to find different things in them, aren't you? Especially when they're your own songs, you can, I guess, put your individual stamp of that moment on them.
And I'm still in the process of putting my work out there to the world.
Yeah.
So I do it really still in the spirit of discovery, being discovered, waiting for my overnight sensation after 30 years in the business.
Now, you're a good-looking man. You're a great-looking woman. You're a good-looking man.
Thank you, darling.
And in your 20s, you went to New York, and I guess were you seeking your fortune?
Absolutely,
Tell
I
us
was.
about that time.
Yes, I went off on Freddie Laker. That's
Freddie Laker Airlines.
yeah, that really does date me. Went off on Freddie Laker, went to New York. I'd done a little bit of modelling, and I walked into Click Model Management in the Carnegie Hall building, and they took me on the spot. Because I had a shaved head even then, and I was like the first top model to have a shaved head, and I worked for Condé Nast. I did, British Vogue. I did Per Louis, Italian Vogue. I did a number of.
You were on a couple of covers as
few
well.
covers.
We'll show them, I think.
Yeah, I was on a couple of covers, and I had quite a good career. Really, it caused a bit of a sensation. Worked for Jean-Paul Gaultier, Comme des Garçons. I was flown all over the world. It was great. It took me away a little bit from my music, but I never stopped playing and writing.
And in interviews, I guess you obviously said, I don't just look like this, I'm also very musical and here are my songs.
Yes, of course. I tried to get that across, but they weren't really that keen on hearing it. I think they were more interested in what I was wearing than what I had to say, sadly. But, and I went on writing and continued to this day in the same vein. It's just, I never stopped.
Always as Ty Jeffries, though, always staying as you during this time. Were you sort of bubbling away, especially when you came back to England and it was the 80s, 90s, on the gay scene, seeing drag maybe? I mean, were you thinking,
I was very interested in, my father had a couple of albums of an artist called Jim Bailey, who was an American female impersonator, very mainstream. He was on television all the time. He was on the Lucille Ball show. He was on Ed Sullivan show. America's a very much more welcoming place to drag artists. They see it as an art form. We, in this country, see it as a bit of a joke still. I mean, we loved Daniel LaRue. Daniel LaRue was a great friend of my parents. And my dad did Hello Dolly with him in the West End. But I was influenced by Jim Bailey, who had a great voice, as we said, and then Charles Pierce and people like that. And then I was around on the fashion scene, so I was going to club nights like Kinky Galinky, which was outlandish. It was like the last days of the Roman Empire. Everyone was dressed up extraordinarily.
This was early 90s, was it?
Late 80s, early 90s, yes.
Yeah.
And I used to go to Kinky Galinky dressed as Joan Crawford, or I remember I created a character called Helga Rostrum for some reason. I think my first drag character was Gloria Constantine. And he was a sort of old school movie star. So I had all these characters buzzing around my head.
Right.
And it wasn't until the 90s when I did Miss Hope Springsteen's Streisand, which is the first thing I did at the King's Head Theatre in Islington, that I actually sort of went out there as this character, Miss Hope Springs, and that's when she sort of came on the scene.
So Hope's been on the stage for about 10 years now, actually, in various shows and beautiful, beautiful clothes and looking amazing. But earlier this year was her debut at the Wigmore Hall.
Well, it was, I debuted there in 2017 when I did my The Devil Made Me Do It tour.
Yeah.
That was a live show to 500 people. They asked me back during lockdown to do a solo recorded show for them to stream, which I did.
Great.
And that was to 500 empty seats, which is a completely different experience.
Yeah, I bet. Well, the song we're going to show now is one of my favourites, and it's called All the Fun of the Fair. It's really poignant, very moving. Just tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write it. Would you get the title first and then write around it?
I think I did in this case.
Yeah.
All the Fun of the Fair is really a little story in a circle, where it's an older woman talking about how she saw this young person staring at her across the street, and she was that person, and in the end, she's now the older person talking to the young person. It's just like a circle, the circle of life.
All the fun of the fair, I've had all the fun of the fair. You get just one ticket for which you must pay. Don't go and waste it or throw it away. Play all the stalls, shout hooray when that coconut falls. At the end of the day, although you may not get your share, at least you can say, I was there, bad or good, good or bad. I've had all the fun of the fair.
So that's Hope looking amazing at the Wigmore Hall. So let's talk about the transition when you actually decide, okay, I'm going to be Miss Hope Springs. She's your muse, she's your alter ego,
Yes.
she's your...
My interface.
Your
My
interface, your
creative
vehicle.
interface, yes.
Yeah, so turning into Hope, how long is the process and how does it change your persona, your thoughts and feelings, your confidence?
Well, I'm sure, as you know, as an artist yourself, it takes, the whole day before to sort of focus and get yourself prepared. And then I get up on, early on the day of a show and I shave. Being a character actor, I want to be in character, so I shave my legs and my chest and my arms and everything. And start even getting in the zone then. But it's not until after about an hour and a half, 2 hours makeup, that I put the wig on, that Miss Hope Springs is then in the room and Ty's left the building.
Do you do all your own makeup?
I do all my own makeup.
And you've just learnt to
I
do
make
that
my
over this?
eyelashes. I have several pairs of eyelashes I put together. I do my own wigs. I make my own costumes. I do everything.
Yeah, brilliant. So the wig is like, that's it, she's on, she's off, and she's out, and you're not answering to Ty.
No.
Okay.
And that's when her persona takes over. I mean, sometimes I literally, when I'm in the dressing room, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do in this show. I really don't know what's going to come out. I know the numbers.
That's being a woman, doll.
And then I go out, and once I'm on stage, Hope literally takes over.
Amazing. And how do you feel as her, as opposed to when you're just being Ty? I mean, you've said to me, you don't like performing as you, and it's you're not as confident, and you just, that's very interesting, isn't it? As a woman, you just become empowered.
I think it's not only being the woman. I do think that is something that I really have inside me to express. I write for women mostly. It's the dressing up. It's the character actor in me. It's I could play a Georgian decrepit gentleman. I could play Scrooge.
As long as you've
if
got
I had the makeup
Yeah.
and the wigs and the teeth, and I could get into being, any kind of character. I'd love to play an alien. In fact, I sometimes think that if you've ever seen the movie Mars Attacks with the extraordinary alien women, but inside is this little man pulling the levers to make them do it, that's me. So when I'm doing the show, Hope is like this fabulous creature, completely in control, in command. And I'm still in there, just behind the scenes, paddling very quickly, pulling all the levers, like the Wizard of Oz,
Like the Wizard of Oz,
There's no one behind this curtain.
Well, audiences absolutely adore her. We're going to show a clip of you now with the band doing The Devil Made Me Do It. And what's really interesting is your audiences are so, there's young, old, there's gay guys, there's married women, there's everybody. We're all in there cheering her on. She just is the every woman, really, isn't she?
Yes, I love that. I mean, it's a broad demographic that I appeal to.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
From people in their teens through to people in their 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, Fenella Fielding used to come and see my show all the time, which was wonderful. And she said, this guy could be understood in Timbuktu.
That's
Which
nice.
was a really nice
Really
thing
nice
to say about my work, that it's beyond even the language, that I'm expressing something more that everybody can appreciate, I think, beyond the music and the lyric.
When at last she found me, she was crying. And she asked me why I'd run away and hidden from her like that. And I replied, the devil made me do it. The devil made me do it. He promised me a kitten and a ball of string. The devil made me do that thing, that bad thing. The devil made me do that thing. When I was 12 years old, I was packed off to boarding school. I cut the pigtails off my best friend Emily Franklin Poole. She was a bitch. She deserved it. She had it coming. The headmistress chastised me and asked me why I'd used the scissors in that inappropriate fashion. And I replied, the devil made me do it. The devil made me do it. He promised me a pony in a circus ring. The devil made me do that thing, that thing. The devil made me do that thing.
So that was Hope Springs, like wowing the crowd, you know, just absolutely.
That's her theme song, The Devil Made Me Do It. She can't really leave the building without doing it, or people get a bit pissed off.
So you do, I mean, you're such a prolific writer and you've got hundreds of songs. And Hope Springs does shows, doesn't she?
Her French show, Je m'appelle Hope. There's her Vegas to Weimar Berlin show. There's a show called Blood, Sweat and Sequins, which is partly based on her disco album, 1973 disco album, which she released 3 weeks after disco died.
Oh, poor Hope.
Yeah, timing is everything.
She's really kind of got this amazing fan base here in London. There's a Christmas show.
Yes, Christmas A Go-Go, which has been going for like 5 or 6 years now. I bring it back to the Crazy Coqs. I've done it at Wilton's Music Hall. It's a Christmas show based on her 1971 Granada TV special, to this day considered an unaired classic. And that's full of festive songs and that fill all the right places of all the traditional Christmas songs, but they're all original, they're all new. But they're sing-alongs and clap-alongs, and people really get in.
Yeah,
and they come
do.
To see
I've
the
seen
show.
people really do respond, don't they?
And they come to see the show to hear the songs again, so it's become a bit of a Christmas tradition.
Well, this is a Christmas show by Miss Hope Springs, and it's the perfect antidote to Christmas. It's fun. It's great fun.
Well, I've loved Hope since she was not even a hope, but more of a wish. But tonight she was the real thing, and yet still a Christmas wish.
I certainly would like to say a few words about the glorious, larger-than-life Miss Hope Springs. So glamorous, so beautiful, so funny, and so adorable.
Wishing you a happy holidays, and it doesn't get any better than this, so make the most of it.
Absolutely marvellous, darling. The old style of variety entertainment at its best.
Miss Hope Springs is absolutely mesmerising.
The timing, the comedy, the songs.
Class act.
Miss Hope Springs is a law unto herself.
Miss Hope Springs is an absolute phenomenon. She delivers the funniest songs, fabulous patter. We just all fell in love with her.
It was the latest of $2.99.
It's a perfect start to Christmas. We had a fantastic evening. I recommend it to anybody. It's just wonderful.
Oh, she was absolutely gorgeous. The show was hilarious, fun, really got me into festive spirit.
She is hugely talented. I don't know why she's not as big as Streisand or Peggy Lee or Marlene Dietrich or Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli. I don't understand it.
Every window's bright with candle glow. Here, Father Christmases go ho, 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 ho.
I had no idea what to expect, and it's a complete package, and it's great.
He loved it. He loved it.
I just loved it.
Ty, it's lovely to get to know you more here in this instance and talk through your life. And of course, let's finish with some more Miss Hope Spring. And yeah, just thanks very much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Really,
it's lovely
really
talking
interesting
to you as well.
to talk
Thank
to
you.
you. Thank you.